Shalom, sweet friends. Hey, welcome to Finding Shalom. I'm Christa, and here I am in my kind of quiet space. It's a little more casual, but I wanted to pop on here. It's kind of impromptu. It was planned for the last quite a few weeks. I've been wanting to get back onto my Psalms 119 series, and so I keep rereading this same section. It's Psalms 119, 49 to 56. And I keep rereading it, going, I need to get on there and do something about it. And today it just stood out to me, especially as I opened up my books to all the different passages that I'm reading for different Bible studies, and they all kind of corresponded all together. And then I felt like God was saying to me, share your testimony. So I don't know, maybe I'll share just a snippet. Maybe the Lord will prompt me to give you a little bit more information. But let's go ahead, and if you want to grab your Bible, because I'm going to be in Psalms 119 mainly. But I might be popping all over the place as we talk about comfort and hope. And I think we need that. If you are suffering from anxiety, if you are suffering from depression, or maybe you used to, maybe the world is spinning out of control around you, maybe you feel overwhelmed, maybe everything around you is just overwhelming. Let's just call it all overwhelming. This video is probably for you, and this passage and the passages I'm going to share today, and possibly some of my testimony, they might be exactly what you need. So go ahead and grab your Bible. Let's gather around the Word of God and see what He has to say to us today. So I'm sure you are shocked that I am back to the Psalms 119 series. I'm sure you thought I forgot. I did not forget. It's been on the back burner. My book has been open to it. My Bible has been open to it. And I just keep rereading it and saying, what do you want me to say about this section? And I had written the word hope and comfort and what it follows. I noticed a repeating word. Let's just look at that really quick and see what that repeating word is. So let's go ahead and read starting in verse 49. So we're in 119, Psalms 119, verse 49. Remember your word to your servant, for you have given me hope. My comfort in my suffering is this: your promise preserves my life. The arrogant mock me unmercifully, but I do not turn from your law. I remember, Lord, your ancient laws, and I find comfort in them. Indignation grips me because of the wicked, who have forsaken your law. Your decrees are the theme of my song whenever I lodge. In the night, Lord, I remember your name, that I may keep your law. This has been my practice. I obey your precepts. And so I noticed a theme of a repeated word, which is remember. So hope and comfort is going to follow the word remember. In verse 49, you see, it says to remember your word to your servant. For you have given me hope. My comfort in my suffering is this: your promise preserves my life. So I wrote down for the first thing about hope and comfort follows God's promises. Remembering God's promises. So what promises has God given to you in your life that you can hang on to? Your hope and your comfort is going to come from knowing that He gave you those promises and He will fulfill them. He cannot lie. He is faithful. He's trustworthy. And in verse 52 it says, I remember, Lord, your ancient laws, and I find comfort in them. So remembering God's laws and His safeguards. His laws, a lot of people think, are not comforting. They are convicting or condemning. But that's not why God gave us the laws. He gave them as kind of guardrails to say, hey, watch your heart, guard your heart, guard your actions. I'm giving you these safeguards to make you feel safe and secure, to give you hope and comfort. And then in 55 it says that in the night, Lord, I remember your name. Hope and comfort follow remembering God's name. Why? Because number one, think about all the different names that God is called in the Old Testament especially. There are names that mean that he's a protector. There's names that mean he has glory, that he is above all. There's names that say he's a provider. Look up his names. If you're needing comfort, if you're needing hope, look at his names, because that is your Father. That is the God who has called you into the family and who has given you hope. And you can lean on that. You can take that to the bank. And I was realizing as I was looking through this morning, my son and I are actually going through the Bible beginning to end, we hope. We're in Exodus. We've made it to the second book. And I was going through, Genesis, the end of Genesis, and I had come to Joseph's story, where his brothers had sold him into slavery. They were going to kill him, so the better option was to put him in a pit and then sell him to some strangers coming by that can sell him into slavery. What a horrible thing. And he ends up going through one thing after another. It's at the end of Genesis, if you haven't read that story. And in the end, God ends up exalting him and putting him high up in the Egyptian kind of government. And he ends up, because of a dream that Pharaoh had, he ended up saving the nation from famine. And also his brothers and his dad had to travel to get food and didn't realize they were getting it from him. It's a great story. But in the end, he's reunited. He gets to see his dad again and his brother, his younger brother, and he's so happy. But his dad passes away after he had brought him to Egypt. And the brothers now are realizing that, oh no, now that dad is gone, Joseph is going to remember what we did to him, and he's going to kill us. And he is high up in the Egyptian government, so he is going to probably get back at us. And he ends up saying something amazing, which we could all apply to our own life. There's been a lot of people that have hurt us. There's been a lot of people that have done us wrong. And life sometimes, at no fault of anyone, has just done us wrong. The economy's turned at the wrong time. The bottom fell out of our financial whatever. Our child was born with an illness. What can you fill in the blank there? Life has been hard. But Joseph says to them, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. And I think that's the story of my life, too. There's been a lot of heartache. There's been a lot of people hurting me, things done wrong. The economy turned at the wrong time. Just so much has happened. And yet it has all been for the good. They meant it for harm. The world meant it for harm. The evil one, Satan, meant it for harm. But God meant it for good. I had also, way back at the beginning of May, I had written this near my Bible, because when I was reading in Genesis, that same thing. God has, God meant it for good. He also named his second child Ephraim and said, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." Did you know as Christians we can even be fruitful? We can succeed in the land of our suffering. Well, that is also because God produces good things in us. He trains us, He disciplines us, He burns off the impurities in us. He makes us more compassionate, more joyful because of the suffering. And I had collected a bunch of verses here about God making beauty from ashes, good from the evil done. I can put a list right here that if you would like to look some of those up, that God will take anything in our lives. When we give our lives to Christ and we become part of His family, He will turn everything and anything into good for His glory and for our good as well. It's amazing to watch, to look at the backstory and think, wow, what amazing goodness you have brought out of my ashes. And just a little testimony of my own, if you want to hear it. I tend to bore people, so please don't tune out too fast. How do you put a lifetime of hurt, pain, depression, anxiety, and yet all of the good wrapped up into it? How do you put that into words in a short amount of time? Basically, the quick of it is that the first 6 years of my life were actually pretty good. I know there were a lot of hard times. I grew up in Hacienda Heights, California. I kind of grew up in gang territory way back then. I grew up in an area that my parents at one point were managers at an apartment, and my mom was so excited about God, and my dad was too. Both of them, my mom was raised Christian. My dad was too, but I think he kind of came into in his 20s, really gave his life over to Christ. And they got married, and of course I was the firstborn. And so I was born right into that excitement to serve Jesus. My dad was a chef at a restaurant, and somehow, and I've got to go down to California and I need to talk to his best friend Rich. Please pray that his best friend Rich can hang on until we can get this house sold and I can go down there and talk to him. But they all were workers at this restaurant in Downey, California called Foxy's. And somehow my dad ends up on a mission trip or something. A bunch of them go to Mexico. I don't know if they were just going for fun, but somehow their bus or their van breaks down, and I think it has a flat tire. And he ends up walking to go get help, and he has to walk through the Tijuana dumps. And when he walks through, I think he finds like there's a baby that is sick or something. I need to find all the details to that. But in the process of that, he falls in love with the people there in the Tijuana dumps. They were people that were just living off the scraps in the dumps. They had taken the cardboard and they had built themselves like little shelters. They were pretty much homeless. And my dad, being a very compassionate individual, he always had such a huge heart. He ends up going back home, and he's like, we've got to do something. And he enlists all of his like the waitresses and the cooks, and now they're collecting things to once a month go down and bring that down into Mexico. And my mom, being super excited and starting out really, that's probably where she began, or maybe right before that, doing the good news clubs for the kids. So I have early memories of going to Mexico and to opening up the back of their yellow van, and there would be big bags of beans and rice and mattresses and I don't know what all was packed back there. I'd sit at my mom's feet, and we would have little breakfast, little cinnamon rolls, probably like Little Debbie type snacks, and a little thing of orange juice. And those were just good times. I can remember my mom doing the little good news clubs to all the kids there, and I remember singing Jesus Loves Me in both Spanish and in sign language. That is the most of my memory. I remember my mom on Sundays when we were back at our place. We had a house at one point, and they were also managers of an apartment. And I remember my mom would, on Sunday mornings, she would send me out to go ask all my friends, are you coming to church this morning? Come on, get in the car, we're all going. And we'd all go. And I remember walking up the steps of this one apartment. It had the old rock stairways that are kind of rocky, filled with rocks. And I got up to the top, and when I knocked on my friend's door, it was probably her dad or grandpa, I'm not sure, opened the door, and he put a gun in my face, and he told me to get out of here. I mean, we had some crazy times. Before I was 6 years old, I had a gun pulled on me twice. We lived in also a house where there was a lot of gang activity, and there was a kid down the street with a gun, and he put it in all of our faces, you know. It's just, and yet, those 6 years are probably shaped me for the rest of my life. Because when I see my parents' faces, handing out food, handing out Bibles, handing out help for all these people, I saw the excitement on my mom and dad's face as they did all of this. And then shortly after that, about 6 years old, of course, my brother and sister have come at this point. So I've got 2 siblings at this point, and we moved then to Anaheim, California, into another house. And then at one point, and I'm not sure about when, my mother has to go to work. I'm sure they just needed help to pay the bills. Things were getting more expensive. Gas prices were probably crazy. This is in the 70s. And she's a nurse. That's what she went to college for. And she goes back to work, and she wants to work night shift so that she can be with us all day long. And so I think it began to wear on her. And I think there was an underlying mental illness in there that I'm not quite sure about. But life became a little bit harder and a little bit harder. And by the time we got to be teenagers, and there were now 4 of us, and we were going to babysitters and all of this kind of stuff, life was chaotic. Life was hard. My mom had mood swings. I don't know if they were bipolar or what, but our life just felt hard. And she would just snap at any moment. And we would, call my dad at work. And I think back now, and I think, wow, how hard it was for him, that he's trying to work to make a living, to pay the bills, and we're constantly calling him and saying, help, 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 and she's calling my dad and saying that we are misbehaving, and there was just a lot of chaos. And then we'd be at different babysitters, and there were some really horrible ones. But there was this one babysitter that God put in my life, I know, and that's Florence. And she was just a wonderful Jewish mom, and I followed her around and watched her clean and watched them do all of their Jewish traditions and all of that. And she was probably our most stable and longest. I think we did some of the other babysitters when she couldn't. But anyways, getting into high school, life just became harder and harder, and a lot of the kind of insecurities and the chaos. I'm a personality that likes things particular and ordered and slow and steady. That's just my personality, even from a child. And so the chaos of not knowing what was going to happen that day, and not knowing this and not knowing that, and all the accusations and my mom's mental illness really just took a toll on me. And I became angry. I became frustrated. It's almost like my mom had a spirit that just tormented her, and it just came and tormented us. And to the point where I became so angry and frustrated at some of the abuse and stuff like that, that I actually turned on her. And I did not plan on sharing all of this. Dear Lord, I hope all of this is okay. Dear Lord, just guide me to what I need to share and what I need to not share. It's hard sharing things about your parents when they just passed, because you want to honor them. Because the thing is that my parents were good people. They were hurting people. They were people who I look back now and I see that they really wanted to serve God. But life was hard and it got in the way. And they were learning. And we were caught in the midst of it. And now I look back at raising my own children, and I made a lot of mistakes. And we were just learning. We were trying our best. We wanted to serve God, and we weren't doing it perfect. And so I guess the reason God's having me do this is to tell you that if you feel like you're a failure, if you feel like the anxiety, the depression, like nothing went right, that there's hope. We see Joseph, who says, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." The enemy meant it for bad, but God meant it for good. And what he ended up doing in me, and the reason why I'm so raw, and the reason why I allow you guys to see my flaws, and in Bible study I do the same thing. I go ahead and tell the bad parts. Not all the bad parts, because I try to protect people. But the reason that I am so vulnerable and I allow people to see my mistakes, and even on the sewing channel, I let people see that I don't quite know sometimes how I'm going to deal with something, and I hit a challenge and then I try to regroup, is because there's so many people out there pretending like they are professionals and they've got it all together. And the rest of us watching people think, well, they have it all together, and I'll never amount to that. And that's a lie from the enemy, because we're all out there learning. My parents were learning. They were trying their best to serve God. They were trying their best to raise a family. Jay and I tried our best to raise our family. We tried our best to serve God. And some mistakes were made. And but God is going to turn that for good. It doesn't matter. That's the security that we have. That is the hope that it says in Psalms 119. That its hope and comfort follows remembering God's promises, remembering his safeguards, his laws, and remembering his name. God's not going to go back on his promises even when we screw it up. There is security in knowing who God is, who he is in the Old Testament and the New Testament, who he is and who you are in him. And also there's security in knowing that you can't screw it up, that you can just surrender and give yourself over to God. You can't screw it up, because he's going to turn it to good no matter what. And I was noticing that my notes here, just back in Exodus, actually, this is when I was a couple weeks later going through Exodus 5 and 6, and it was like in chapters 5 and 6, Moses goes to help the people. He goes to actually do good, to do God's will, and it's actually looking worse because he goes to ask Pharaoh to let the people go. And Pharaoh actually gets so mad at him and God that he turns around and makes it worse for the Israelites. He makes them work harder. He takes away their ability to make bricks and tells them you have to make them anyway. You'll have to read Exodus chapter 5 and 6. But what I wrote on here is that right before God is about to set his people free, the enemy tries to stop it by discouraging us, frustrating us, exhausting us, making us want to quit, tempting us to go another way, distracting us, and he doesn't want us to be free. It gets worse right before God is about to set us free. And isn't that the truth? That the enemy's like, oh, I don't want them to be free. I don't want them to have joy. I don't want them to share that joy with others. I want them locked in prison and in chains. I want to remind them that they're worthless. I want to remind them of their past sin. I want to remind them that they can't do this, that they are not enough, and you know what, we aren't enough, but with God we are enough because he is enough. And I put after all of this that the enemy's trying to frustrate us and exhaust us. Jay and I right now are going through a series of every single thing in our house, at my sister's house, at the other house, is all breaking. Yesterday we got a call from the neighbor at my sister's house, and the sprinkler had been going on, and my sister lives in Louisiana, so she's not here. It had been going for at least an hour. Then we find out possibly for a day, maybe 2 days, that the sprinkler had been running and something had broke. Jay was supposed to go and work on the other house, and he had to go there. The dog suddenly gets a growth on her lip that just starts doubling and tripling, and now we got to go take her to the vet. The enemy doesn't want us free. The enemy doesn't want us to the other side of this. And you're going to see why as we keep doing this update series as much as I can. Because when we sell this house, this story about my dad and the van and going to Mexico and all of that, you're going to see that God is about to set Jay and I free so that we can finish a work that my dad had started. Not the exact same thing, but it's just interesting how this is all working out. I put, but God. Remember, Pharaoh, the enemy, is going to make it harder because God's about to set him free. But God. God promises deliverance. If you read in chapter 5 and 6, you're going to see, I've been writing down in this book, this wonderful book that my friend got me, and it was too pretty to just write, random notes. So I've been actually tracking my God shots, the personality of God, the characteristics of God as I've been going through. And this is what I wrote about the characteristics of God in this horrible chapter about the enemy, kind of almost making it worse for them. God promises deliverance. He hears us. He remembers his covenant, his promises. He will set us free. He makes us his own people. He becomes our God, our provider, our defender, our protector, our guide, our redeemer, and our savior. And I wrote up here, I decided the word redeemer really stood out to me, so I looked it up, what the definition was. It says someone who saves, rescues, or delivers another from bondage, debt, or captivity. Primarily used in Christian theology, referring to Jesus Christ as the one who redeems humanity from sin through his death and resurrection, effectively bringing back or restoring value. The enemy, I wrote this, the enemy wants you to quit. Did you know the enemy wants you to quit? Have you felt like quitting? Have you felt like just kind of hiding, just leaving life, just saying, this is a lot, to throw in the towel, to give up, right before God is going to open the door to freedom? in chapter 5 and 6, the Israelites actually get mad at Moses and say, you know what? You're making it worse. Go away. We don't want you to try to make us free. They've been in slavery for 40 years. They're kind of used to being in slavery. They're beat. They're knocked down. Their children are actually being killed, their boys, so that they don't multiply. And instead of being grateful that God has sent Moses to answer their prayers, they're frustrated and they're mad because it's getting worse. Are you mad at God because things just seem to get worse? Are you feeling anxious that something else bad is going to happen? Right before God is going to open the door to freedom and victory in your life, don't let the enemy trick you into thinking that your situation is hopeless. Don't let him lie to you and tell you that there is no way out of this mess. God has your path to freedom already mapped out. And I wrote that like months ago. But here it all was like laying open. I had different parts from Genesis laying here just because I haven't had time to clean up my room in here. So I've got notes everywhere, and they all were open to this thing that points to Psalms 119. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about God and his goodness. In my frustration as a teenager, in my anger, it just built up. It just came to a surface where I actually turned my aggression on my mom. And I didn't mean to hurt her, but I ended up bruising her arm pretty bad. And I just had enough. I tried to protect my siblings, try to keep them from the abuse. It was just chaos. And in that chaos, she just had a desire and a hunger for people to accept her, to love her. And she had a tendency to want prayer requests and stuff for the attention. And she wanted to tell people about how bad her life was, when actually I was excited about God, and probably if left on my own and nurtured, I would have just, I didn't ever want to be a bad kid, but I was told that I was going to be on drugs and do this and do that, and she just was creating these dramatic, hard things. They were lies, and so she could tell everyone. And like I said, it's really hard to talk about her after she passed, because God really healed our relationship in the end, and he helped me walk through some forgiveness. But all of her abuse through the years of her, right before school, it was always in the morning. I'd wake up all in a good mood. I'm a morning person, and I'd be getting breakfast and that, and all of a sudden she'd go crazy, to the point where I was getting on the bus just crying, and parts of me were bruised, and I would try to be hiding it. And this is too much information for you guys, but when I turned on my mom and I bruised her arm, she then went to church the next day with short sleeves, even though it was the middle of winter. And she walked and paraded that around so that people could feel sorry for her. And I thought, wow, all these years that you were hitting me, and I hid it. I made sure that people didn't see it. And now you're just parading it around so you can make me into the bad guy. And in the long run, I ended up in a mental hospital, where they locked me up for the whole summer. But that's okay. God has used those things for good. I would come across this wonderful man, Jay, who that summer after I got out, actually we kind of fell in love, and that's a long story too. And he was kind of that bad boy, had the loud music, the fast car. My parents, he wasn't a Christian, so to speak. And in that, I actually wanted to be directed in a way that would have made my parents mad. And God, in his great sense of humor, in the midst of all of that, Jay had to come to church with me because the only way he could date me or see me on certain days was to go to church. And the pastor preached a sermon, and he accepted Christ. And he never told me that until later. And God, in his sense of humor, ended up putting me with the right person, even despite myself. And God has used that pain to where when I had children, I wanted to be like the perfect mom. I wanted to have perfect meals on the table, and when they came home, I wanted to have cookies and sit and chat with them, and I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt and discipline correctly, and so God used that. And yet in that, there was a big mess, we ended up, that's a long story as well. But God has been using all of these things to the point where this channel was actually birthed out of the fact that after many, many, many years of severe depression, my marriage just about falling apart, there was one point when Jay could not figure out how to get me out of bed because I was just so depressed. Like I literally felt like my body was dying. The anxiety, the depression, it was pulling me under. It was bigger. It felt like there was this magnet in the bed, and that every time I tried to get out and put myself together, I tried to put on a pretty dress, I tried to do my hair and makeup, and the magnet would pull me back. And I would try to pull myself together to be around people, or when the kids came home from school, try to pull myself together and try to be there and be attentive, and then the draw would pull me back. And God, that's a whole long story of my depression that I'll probably fill in. But God used opening a bridal shop, and he used making a wedding dress, or actually it was a formal, a dream of that, and waking me up. My goodness, I don't want this to be too long. But he showed me step by step how to pull myself out of the depression, not with drugs. I tried some of the antidepressant, and those were even worse. They sent me into a tailspin of worse things. So, I knew that it had to be God, or I wasn't going to get out of this. And God set me free. And then after that, I still kind of walked through this heaviness. And he showed me through doing, I had read a little article on a lady who was doing a word of the year. And so I started to do words of the year. And I would do different words, and that whole year I'd dig through the Bible and try to find every word in the Bible, every verse that had that word in it. Or I tried to, just pray through that word through that whole year. It came down to, after being out of depression, and now I'm running a bridal shop, and God has restored me, but now the recession's hit, and now there's so much financial just exhaustion and weight on me. It's really hard when you're running a business and you still have to make all the purchases for the things that you've committed to that year, and yet customers stop walking in the door, and the taxes get behind, and one thing after another, and there was just so much stress. And yet God was walking through with me all of those times. He would bring things to my mind, like in Isaiah, I think it's 41, about the waters will wash over you, but they will not drown you, and the fire, you can walk through the fire and you will not get burned, because basically God's with you. And I felt that all the way through. And then I came across a word. I was looking for a word one of the years, and I was like, God, what? I would pray for months, like, we're coming to a new year. What word do you want me to have? And I kind of needed, it was an exhausting year, and I really needed rest. I really needed peace. I really needed just an easy year. I walk into a church that we were going to at the time, and they handed me a bulletin, and I'm sure I have the bulletin somewhere around here, and it said Shalom. And around it were small words all the way around that said things like peace, completeness, rest, tranquility, wellness, just all the way around it. And I was like, wait a minute, all those little words are all the words I was thinking that I wanted to use. And there was this central word. And the pastor began to preach, and he began to talk about the word shalom, the Hebrew word shalom. And I knew then right away in that service, this is my word of the year, and I'm grabbing onto this word. And the next year, it actually became one of the hardest words ever, because it was the hardest word ever because of the fact that I was like, oh, this is going to be the most peaceful year. I'm so excited to have this word. And God was teaching me, I want you to have shalom. I want you to have peace when it doesn't make sense. I want you to have peace in the middle of the storm, because I want you to hang on to the peace. I want you to hang on to the Prince of Peace. Hang on to my ankles. I'm the one who calms the storm. So I'm going to throw a bunch of storms at you. And, oh boy, there's so much testimony here. I mean, we have dealt with severe mental illness in one of our children's lives. We've dealt with, oh my goodness, that year was probably one of the hardest years we had. I remember when the rain started coming, and we had our bridal shop in a old building from the early 1900s, and the water just began to pour through my bridal suite in the most important season. So there's this window of time that if you do not make enough bridal sales, the rest of your year is going to be really, really hard. And of course, that's when my bridal suite was completely underwater. So many little things, but God. We were able to hang on to the comfort. I was able to hang on to the Prince of Peace. I hung on to my word. I had a man come into my shop to rent a tuxedo, and he spoke words. He was actually Jewish, and he spoke words right into my complete worry over my son, who was suffering from a mental illness. And God just met me everywhere. So the next year, I think that was 2016. So the next year is 2017. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think this word is so huge. I don't think I quite have the grasp. I need a bigger grasp on this word. And so I decided to do shalom one more year. So I'm going into that year, and then my words start to become, from that point on, I kept the word shalom, and then I had these sub words. And I can't remember the order of it, but one of the sub words was to obey. And I realized that obedience leads to shalom, to peace, to wholeness, to completeness. I'm trying to remember all my words. Love was one of mine, love. And I searched everything on love, and I needed to learn how to love and forgive. One of my words was forgive. Another word was freedom. And I had to learn that the Israelites, they were slaves for 400 years in the wilderness. Or they were slaves for 400 years in Egypt, and then they end up going into the wilderness because God needed to teach them how to become free people. And to be free, you have to actually be submissive, or to be a servant of Christ, of God. You have to surrender to God to feel true freedom. And that doesn't make sense in the world's views. So that's what this channel has all been about. It's when I found the word shalom, and it began to really do a healing. It began to do a work in my life. It began to help me walk through freedom to freedom. It began to help me learn how to obey. It began to help me learn how to forgive forgive all the past and the hurt, and begin to heal relationships. And I actually wanted to share that with everybody I could come in contact with at my bridal shop, all my employees. I used to just share all of that with them. I suddenly became excited about life again. I saw new colors out in the world. The depression, the anxiety had lifted, and I wanted to share that. And right before I'm about to close the bridal shop and walk into a new season of life, to start and just really be able to put all my focus into this channel, and put my focus into a new Bible study we had just started, and really began to do God's work. The enemy began to throw darts. He started to make Jay ill. Jay had pancreatitis, and then he ended up having sleep apnea. He ended up not being able to sleep at night, which then I couldn't sleep at night. And we were about to close the shop, and we were about to enter into the promised land of working for God. And it all just hit. Financial problems hit. Jay's mom actually had 10 days after I turned in the keys to the bridal shop, and knew that I was walking into this new season, this new future. We had used the liquidation to pay off all the debt. We were excited. It was so good. They were in the midst of moving my stuff from the shop into the studio, and they had all the cement. We realized as I was meeting my first customers, it was raining a lot, and we had dirt and actually grass that went kind of to the door, and the brides were walking through mud, and that wasn't good. And so we took some of the money and we laid the cement out here so that they'd have a clean walkway, and that was all being torn up at the same time. And I'm moving here, and the house is filled with boxes. We've got storage units, and I'm trying to figure everything out. And in the midst of that, we got a call that Jay's mom had a massive heart attack down in California. And so Jay left and ran down there to be with her to help, and the kids went down, but I was still meeting some brides and trying to figure out the cement situation out here. We had equipment out here. Anyways, all of that to say that God used all in my life, all of it, for His good, and He's still working out something. So here we are. I don't want to fully give you all the things that we're going to go to, because some things need to be secret for a little bit. But going back to my first 6 years of my life, and the mission and the passion that God put in my heart back there in Mexico, in a little yellow 70s van filled with rice and beans and just things that household needs, and mattresses and Bibles. That little passion, that little thing, that little seed in my heart, now to have my dad's house, that when he came up, he said, "I'm coming up to Idaho." And my mom's like, "I don't want to come to Idaho. I've got this job down here." And they were battling it out. And my other sister, is at the end of her high school life. And anyways, he ends up picking out the house that we are now fixing up. And he had the dream. And I think about my dad, and I think about how he just desired to follow God. He just desired to serve God. And the enemy threw everything at him. The enemy threw a mental illness of my mom. He threw financial problems. He threw everything at my dad. And I think my dad felt a little defeated, at the end. He did get his pastoral license. He did get to do some amazing work. But I think he felt defeated. And I think that we can all feel defeated. We all need hope and comfort. We all need to know that God meant good. What people did to harm you, what people did to destroy you, what the enemy meant for evil, but God intended it for good. Genesis 50:19-ish. And whatever the enemy meant to do and hit us with, every single time we're about on the cusp, and here we are, we're just like when I closed the shop and we're right on the edge of going into the next season of life where we're going to serve God with everything we have. The enemy just is throwing darts and flaming arrows and, our health, finances, the dogs, the cats, massive chaos. But God, let's go back to that thing. But God, He hears us. He remembers His covenant, His promise to us. He will set us free. He makes us His own people. He becomes our God, our provider, our defender, our protector, our guide, our redeemer, and our savior. And back to our Psalms 119. The reason why this chapter of Psalms 119 has been so important to me. A couple summers ago, I did a summer of Psalms, and I ended up 2 weeks just in one chapter because it's so long and so good. And I thought, oh, what a boring chapter. And then the chapter just came to life, and I realized Psalms 119 is a guide to point us to the rest of the Bible, to show us that you remember God's promises in here. So hope and comfort follows remembering God's promises. This book is filled with God's promises, and I know He's given some directly to you. And He's not done. He will fulfill those promises. I have some promises in here that at one point I wrote down, it doesn't look like you're ever going to fulfill these promises. We're going to see that. If you saw Monday's video with Lazarus dying, Mary and Martha both walk up to him, and Mary even falls down at his feet and says, if you would have been here, our brother wouldn't have died. Do you ever feel like that? If you would have showed up, God, if you would have answered this prayer, we wouldn't be in this mess. Have you ever just been mad at God? It's okay, He can take it. But this says that His promises are going to come true. It says, remember your word to your servant, for you have given me hope. My comfort in my suffering is this: your promise preserves my life. Joseph probably hung on to the promises that God gave him. He hung on to it. And it says, of course, in 52, I remember the Lord, your ancient laws, I find comfort in them. Find comfort. There's laws are also just all of His decrees, His precepts, He kind of lays things out for us. And they're comforting to know that if we follow some of these, He's going to fulfill His promises. And then if we look in verse 56, my eyesight, it's a very tiny little thing there. Actually 55. In the night, Lord, I remember your name that I may keep your law. This has been my practice. I obey your precepts, but I remember your name. If you need comfort, if you need security, remember God's name. Just do a Google search. What are all of God's names? El Shaddai. I don't have them in front of me right now, but I've been doing that right here. Elohim, right here in the beginning. Who is God? Elohim means mighty God. Yahweh Elohim is Lord God. Let me find Adonai, Lord and Master. El Roy, the God who sees. we see in Genesis, I can't remember what chapter, but Hagar, she is out, hurt. People have kind of rejected her. That's a long story between her and Sarah and Abraham. She ends up in the wilderness and says, you don't, like, just kill me. I don't even care. And God appears to her and he says, go back. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to protect you. And she calls him Elroy, which means God who sees. There's, let's see, Yahweh, I can't pronounce all these. The God who provides. Jehovah Jireh means the God who sees. Let me find some others. There's oh my goodness, there's so many. There's the I am. He's basically all those. He's provider. He's all of that. So I'm trying to, as I go through the Bible, keep a list of all of his names, and then just different aspects of God and his character and his all of his promises, his covenants. That's his promises to say, you know what, even if you don't fulfill your part of the promise, I'm going to fulfill my part of the promise. It's called a covenant in the Old Testament. I probably went on too long. There's so much of my testimony that God showed that the worst case scenario, the worst things that could happen to me, the things that should have took me out, the things that the enemy could have been victorious over, God has flipped it. There was some attacks on our marriage, and God used it to actually strengthen our marriage. So God took the bad and turned it into good. God took the things with my mom, and I just love her to pieces now. I felt like my whole life my dad wasn't coming to my rescue, and I wanted someone desperately to come to my rescue. And now I look back and I see my dad for who he was. He was a man who wanted to serve God, who had a heart, who was always bringing people into his home to serve them, to help them, to provide for them, even though he didn't have money himself. He never had very much money. In order for me to get through high school and even my wedding, he had 3 jobs. He would wake up in the morning and throw newspapers, and he would work at night at restaurants. He would he was just trying his best, and he was a human, and he was doing his best. He didn't know what to do with my mom a lot of the times, and I think, you think, oh, he was an enabler. No, I think he loved her, and he had a lot of grace. He had a lot of grace. And then I look at my mom and I think, you know what? I used to think of her as the enemy, as the evil one who caused so much problem. And now I see her as a broken person who loved Jesus with everything she had and didn't quite know what to do with that, didn't know what to do with a mental illness, didn't know how to function when she was trying to work a night shift as a nurse and then try to be awake to take care of the kids during the day. And it messed with her mental health. And I see a woman who just wanted to serve Jesus. And in her last moments, she was setting up a good news club for children to teach them about Jesus. And she had an aneurysm. And I really believe that God shut her mouth so she couldn't have one last hurtful thing to say to me before. So I can remember her quiet and I could say the things I needed to say. And in that, and in all that's gone on, God has used it for good, because I want to now take the passion and the convictions that my parents had. And I want to move forward, and hopefully, if we can get past the washer and dryer breaking, and the dogs and the cats and all the fiery darts of the enemy. But we will, because God will set us free. He's just teaching us how to be free. And how we're going to be free is we're going to hang on to the Prince of Peace. We're going to hang on to the security of our Savior, because He is everything we can't be. And just relax in the fact that we get to glory in doing His will. Anyways, that's Psalms 119. That's like our 7th section. And I do want to keep on going, because Psalms 119 is the chapter of the Bible that points you to the rest of the Bible and tells you how to use it. How to use it for comfort. How to use it to seek God. How to use it, how it is your word of truth. How to use it as guardrails. All of the things. That's my passion. That's a little bit of my testimony. And I hope you all have a beautiful day, and that you find peace that surpasses all understanding. That you find that shalom that is the wholeness, the completeness. That you can know that if you're suffering from anxiety, God can rewire your mind to be so focused on Him, to see Him, that you don't even worry about anything else, because you're leaning in on His character. I will see you in the next video, and hope you have a wonderful week. This week our local Bible study is John chapter 10, the Good Shepherd. The rest of the group, we've got out John chapter 11, where we see Mary and Martha wrestling with the exact same things. You're not alone. That's why I love the Word of God, because we see people wrestling with the same things that we are wrestling. And that's why I'm honest with all of you, because I want you to see that I'm wrestling with some of those same things, and yet I've found victory. And you can find victory too. Shalom, my sweet friends. Have a beautiful day.